Hello and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast, your Nicolas Cage movie review podcast. I'm Derek. That is Ryan.
This is Ryan, yes. And if you're watching instead of listening, you may notice that it seems like I've been in some sort of kerfuffle, and that is what happened. And I was in a fight with a vehicle, and you should see what that vehicle looks like.
Some fisticuffs
Exactly, yeah. It might
with a
have gotten a
Camry.
couple blows in. It was in a court, actually. But I'm good. I'm good. No concussion or anything.
That's good.
And ready to talk about this movie.
But if you say anything too weird, maybe we can attribute it to a couple
Sure, we'll
blows
go
to
with
the
we'll
head.
go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is episode 54 of the show. We are covering 2003's Matchstick Men, which is a Ridley Scott film that
Hmm.
co-stars Sam Rockwell and Alison Lohman. Has some other people in it you might know: Bruce Altman, Bruce McGill. I'm sure some people recognize them. The movie is about, quote, a phobic con artist and his protege are on the verge of pulling off a lucrative swindle when the former's teenage daughter arrives unexpectedly.
I mean, that is accurate,
It's not
I would
bad.
say.
Yeah, not too bad.
Um,
Now, I had never seen this before. I didn't really know much about it other than seeing the movie poster and really liking Sam Rockwell as well as Nick Cage, of course. Had you seen this one?
no, but I'd heard a lot of stuff about it. It's one of those movies where, like, if you're talking to another Nick Cage fan, a lot of times that this movie comes up because it's fairly highly regarded in terms of Nick Cage movies.
Yeah, it's got a 7.3 on IMDb. It didn't do particularly well. It basically broke even at the box office, not counting marketing. So not a smash hit or anything like that. But Ryan, you took some notes, I assume, and we're
I
gonna go
did,
through
yeah.
those.
I did, yeah. I want to say just straight out of the gate, 'cause sometimes I do this. I did really enjoy this movie.
Yeah.
Um, it was fun. It was you made good use of Nicolas Cage um for this specific role because I feel like a lot of actors probably could have done this role, but his specific set of talents really kind of made this movie a notch above what it could have been otherwise. So
I agree with that. Yeah, it was very compelling and engaging. I was really with it a lot, the whole way. There was not getting too far along. There's one thing about it that I found very distracting, but we can get to that.
sure. Um, I didn't read like I guess when we rolled the or did the wheel, I read the description, but I had completely forgotten that before the movie started, and so I had really no idea what we were getting into with this. Yeah, so yeah, some of the notes may come across like I'm surprised at something, or that I didn't know it going into it, but that's
Sure.
why. So yeah, right at the very beginning, we get this weird font, another weird font,
Yeah.
opening credit Nick Cage movies. We've had a couple of those. I don't remember which one specifically, but there was a couple where they just used a super oddball font for their opening credits, and this was one.
And I didn't care for it. Random letters, seemingly random letters were capitalized. Maybe
Yeah.
they spell something out or something. I don't know, but it was weird. It was distracting.
Um, but we do get a Nicolas Cage voiceover right away, which
Yeah.
is a thing on our bingo card. So, it was quick. It was like him counting something.
Hmm.
Three, I think counting to three,
In
because that's kind of
Spanish.
his
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, which is another language, so that's another box. But yeah, that's we get that quick voiceover and then it never happens again throughout the movie. So
It
yeah,
counts.
so the movie right away is trying to establish that we are dealing with a person that has some sort of mental illness, specifically OCD at the very least.
Yes.
Does a lot of like closing doors three times, cleaning things, stuff like that. The stuff when you watch a documentary about somebody with OCD, that's the stuff that always, or a movie that it's always they do things three times.
Hmm.
So they definitely make that a point right away. And then we see him take a pill, a little pink pill.
Mhm.
But he does a dry swallow, which I hated.
Yeah, my grandfather did that, man. I hate that. I don't know how a person does that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can't do it.
it's gross. Maybe not gross, but I don't like it. I don't like seeing it. It bothers me.
Right, yes. Yeah, exactly.
So we're introduced to Sam Rockwell, who plays his kind of business partner in this movie. Um,
His protege.
his protege could be called, yeah.
There's one
Um,
line in the movie where he does say that he's the protege.
yeah.
So
But Sam Rockwell says that, or Nicolas Cage
no,
says
Nick
that?
says it to
Oh,
his
okay,
daughter, to Angela.
gotcha. So yeah, we don't really know, like, because like I said, I hadn't really read the description, so I didn't know what exactly we're getting into, but it's determined right away that Sam Rockwell is kind of a shyster, kind of a con man, whatever you want to call him. He's a scam artist, essentially.
Right.
And then he brings Nick Cage into the scam that he's doing, so that you get the vibe that they're both fairly experienced scam artists. They first pose as a company that uh, is giving away that this lady won a, Blazer, a Chevy Blazer, or something else, and
A trip to Paris.
yeah, trip to Paris,
Yeah.
or there was like four options or something, and they said that she can waive the fees for the taxes for whatever this is if they buy a water filter for
It's
like
so bad.
$600, and it's like a $30 filter or something.
I feel so bad for this woman
And
getting
yeah,
just
so she falls for it, and they go over to her house pretending to be federal agents. It's basically like it's an elaborate con.
yes.
It is showing right away that these guys know what they're doing. This is something they've done a lot of. Um, Definitely not amateurs.
No, no, no.
So, yeah, it's established that they're very experienced at this.
Because
Um,
early on I was like, I don't understand how they're making any money off of this. There's no way this seems lucrative. And then they do the cop bit, and I was like, oh,
right.
geez, this
And
is like legit.
during the cop bit, it's I guess they say something like it's a little dark or a little stuffy in the house or something. So they open this back door, which is right behind the table, where they're sitting. And as soon as they do that, we get our first Nick Cage freak out of the movie, where he starts having kind of an episode. He actually holds it together pretty well. But you can see from like it does like his point of view where he's seeing all these bugs coming in, and it's just like
Yeah.
it's a lot of things happening. And he's starting to sweat and freak out. But he maintains his composure for the most part and finishes the scam.
So what they
But
say in the movie is that he's an agoraphobe. So he's not specifically a germaphobe. He doesn't like the outdoors
well, that's
specifically.
one thing. I mean, he could
Yeah.
still be a germaphobe.
Yeah, they just never say that. They say he's an agoraphobe, but
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, my note was he's going to be cagey in this one, because we got our first little glimpse of that there.
I mean, his facial ticks in particular are just like textbook type stuff of how you portray some of these things. It was pretty impressive, frankly.
Yeah. And so also on our bingo card, you're going to get a lot of this. So if you don't know about our bingo, then you should look it up. But we have a bingo card for each movie. But right,
Keijo.
Keijo bingo. And in this scene, we get him being a criminal,
Yeah.
essentially impersonating a government official and smoking, which is two different spots on our bingo card. Um, so I don't know. There's some stuff that happens between here, but my next note is about his dog safe that he has at his house.
That barks when you open it.
That's my note. He has this, like, it looks basically like a statue of a dog,
Mhm.
but you twist the head off, which is disturbing in itself. Um, and when you do so, it barks. So the dog is feeling pain when you twist its head off.
Wow, man. I didn't take it there. I didn't take it there.
I mean, what? How am I supposed to take it? I mean, it's a weird choice. It only barks when you take its head off.
Well, it's a very out of place object too. So like we get a really good look at his apartment at this point because he is, he's very kind of has a lot of OCD tendencies. So the carpet is pristine. He even fixes the carpet in one shot, from walking through it barefoot in socks or whatever. And so his apartment's immaculate, but he does have this dog statue. It
Just
seems
on the
very out of
carpet.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry that the statue hurt you.
It also kind of defeats the purpose of like a hidden safe if it makes noise when you open it. Because like if you have a visitor or something and you're just trying to stash something in the safe, you can't really do it without making noise.
I think he doesn't really have visitors.
But he does later in the movie.
I think the whole point of the movie is he's going through stuff that's not
And
the norm.
also, Frank Mercer, Sam Rockwell's character, comes over many times during the movie.
And he hates that.
Yeah, he does.
Roy hates that.
Um, yeah, so it kind of shows a shot from inside the safe, and you can kind of see what's in there. There's a gun in there, notably,
Hmm.
which if you've watched movies before, then you know immediately that this is going to be a point of plot at some point. The gun is going to come up and be, something's going to happen with the gun, and otherwise we wouldn't have shown it. And then there's a bunch of money in there as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Stacks of cash.
while he's kind of doing some cleaning, he knocks all his pills into the drain, and they go down the drain, and so now he has no pills, and he starts freaking out. It goes from 1 to 100 really quick.
Real quick. Yeah.
So he basically has, if you've ever been around a bipolar person and you've seen a manic episode, that's basically what happens. That's why I said at the beginning that he's got some mental illnesses, because it seems like it's more than just OCD. Because I don't
Agreed.
know necessarily about OCD people having like full mania episodes, but he also has
Well,
the agoraphobia as well, so we know there's multiple mental illnesses happening.
one of the things with OCD, it kind of depends on the compulsions and stuff, but if you're not able to like complete the compulsion, that can cause a lot of problems for people and cause like, I don't want to say outburst isn't the right word, but kind of just like tick like tendencies.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, he ends up calling a doctor. I think
well,
Frank
so what,
Mercer recommends this doctor because he calls
yes.
Frank, or Frank comes over and he's freaking out. And so Frank tells him to go to this doctor because he was getting these pills illegally.
And his original doctor is like gone all of a sudden.
Yeah, just disappears.
Yeah, he's pieced out. And it is
Um,
important that Frank is the one who
recommending. Yeah.
provides the new doctor.
Yeah. Tells him about the new doctor. So he goes to this doctor and he's very standoffish with the doctor, just wants the pills. And the doctor doesn't really act like a doctor. He's
No.
a very weird way of handling therapy.
Yeah, that's
Um,
Bruce Altman's character. He's very kind of standoffish. He doesn't really contribute much to the conversation. And seemingly is going along with everything.
yeah, he does give him some pills, um, but it's a different pill.
Yeah,
And he just gives it in like one of the bubble strips. He doesn't like get a box or a prescription, like
it's a
one of the
sample in like
bottles.
blister packs. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So after a couple of he starts to open up. Roy Waller does, Nicolas Cage does, starts to open up to this doctor. And after a couple of sessions, the Roy asks the doctor to we find out that he has an ex-wife that was pregnant, and he didn't know if it was his or not because she was cheating on him. And so they aren't together anymore, and he never found out if the baby happened or not.
Hmm.
So he asked this doctor to find out if his wife had this baby.
So he gives her the wife's ex-wife's phone number
And
and
so the doctor
everything.
calls and finds out that he does have a daughter, um, and basically arranges kind of a meetup, I guess, because we see him at this park acting very creepy, smoking. He smokes a lot in this movie, a ton. I mean,
So supposedly in the commentary, the writers put in the smoking because every person who we see smoking in the movie is a con artist,
makes
apparently.
sense.
So
But
yeah,
yeah, it's smoking all the time. But yeah, he's in this car and he's
constantly.
like looking for somebody, presumably his daughter. It's because we see him like looking at a couple of girls, young girls, which is creepy. But anytime there's young girls walking by, he's like kind of looking at them because he knows that his daughter would be about 14 at this point.
But he doesn't know what she looks like. He's never
Right.
met her.
No idea.
Yeah.
And I noticed during this that for a neat freak, his car is dirty as hell. Its windows are so streaky. Did you notice that?
I didn't. I did
Oh,
not.
okay.
I was too
Yeah, his
fixated
windows
on
were
him.
so streaky. I was like, man, this guy is a bad kind of neat freak.
Oh man, see, I just found him so captivating because of the way he's just like he's glancing around. He's got his
He
little
was
ticks,
really
and
good in this.
you
I
know,
can't imagine it's easy to act in a respectful way to play a character that has OCD and not make it gratuitous or offensive to somebody who has OCD. I don't have OCD, so I can't speak to whether it's offensive or not. But from my perspective, it seemed like it was done handled very respectably for the most part.
I mean, my take would be that he probably approached it in a similar way to Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah, where he handled the alcoholism.
Which was another very difficult thing to portray in a respectful way, right? And he had to really try and learn and focus on that. So I assume he approached it like that.
That probably is accurate. I mean, he did a really good job with the ticks, and that stuff is. I imagine that's a he. I mean, I'm sure he eats it up. Like, what an acting challenge. But
Well,
yeah,
a
I
lot of
can't
these things
imagine
are
that's
hard
easy.
to fake. These are
Right.
hard things to not to do on
It
purpose.
comes across as fake when you're
You know,
faking it. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And he's
but it
just
never felt that way for him.
so natural. He really sunk into the role.
Yeah. Um. So his daughter shows up on a skateboard,
Mhm.
and he like chases her down because he's watching her, and then she starts to leave because she doesn't see him, and he chases her down.
It's kind of funny. He's like, "Oh yeah, right. I'm supposed to go meet her."
Yeah. And then he's like, "Are you hungry?" And so they go and we get an awkward diner scene.
Yay!
Yeah. And at some point he counts in another language during this scene too, just to reinforce the
Japanese, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so we get another language, which is the same box, but whatever, it just reinforces it. Um, and we also get this really awkward kiss.
Oh yeah, when she goes to leave.
Oh my God, so uncomfortable. She goes to leave and it seems like she wants to hug. Like I think he goes to kiss her on, I don't know. There was
I
like,
thought she
maybe it
was
was
gonna
supposed
go
to be a
kiss his
cheek
cheek.
kiss.
She was gonna kiss his cheek. He was going for the hug and then tried to adjust.
Yeah, and it ended up they just like kissed on the lips.
It was weird.
Very uncomfortable. But then he uh starts setting up for his next grift, and he wears glasses. So we got that
Hey,
box.
hey.
That's another box on our bingo card.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then we get this really sharp transition from like hanging out with his daughter to being in a strip club,
Yeah.
which was an interesting directorial decision.
Straight from that to here's a butt.
Yeah, here's a butt right on the middle of your screen. So I
But
get,
but there was no nudity though, right?
no nudity, no.
Okay, I didn't think so.
But
Okay.
I guess it's important to say that he was hanging out with his daughter and she didn't want to leave, and so he told her that she could stay there for a while until he gets back or whatever.
Hmm. Well, because so she shows up at his house. I guess we kind of
Oh,
skipped
that's
that
right,
part.
that's right.
And he's kind of freaking out a little bit because he's
Because
getting
he's about to
ready.
leave, yeah, for a grift.
Yeah. And, like they don't really know each other and he's, got a lot of his own issues. But yeah, so he leaves her there with no TV. That's important. There's no
Yeah,
TV.
he has no TV. It doesn't, and this presumably takes place in 2003.
Yeah. Hmm.
It was a little ambiguous as to the time period, but it seems like that's what they were going for. They never specified the time period, so I
I
just
assumed it was
assumed
present day. If you don't tell me somehow, it's present day.
exactly.
Yeah.
Unless there's some sort of technology or something that
Right.
gives it away. Yeah.
If every car is from the 50s, I'll assume that it's a 50s piece.
Yeah. So she comes home, or she goes to his house, and he has to leave, and so he says she could stay there, and he she ends up smoking in his house,
And
just like
drinking.
unsupervised smoking. Well, that's later, but
Oh, is it
um,
later?
yeah, but yeah, right away she's lighting up a cigarette because she has no adult supervision, and
She
then
went through all his shit,
she
man.
was going through everything, and she found his safe immediately because it's obvious. I mean, I guess it's not necessarily obvious that you're supposed to rip the dog's head off to open it, but
Yeah,
yeah,
she seemingly figured that out by accident. I do think that was an accident, but she was looking for stuff though.
for sure.
Yeah.
And there was a good line that he has with her later after this grift. that she says, "You don't seem like a bad guy," and he says, "That's what makes me good at it."
Yeah. That was a very good exchange.
It was, yeah, that was a good line. Um, then we get the unsupervised underage drinking. Yeah.
Which he
Uh,
just goes along with. He doesn't stop her. He's so focused on pleasing her and making her happy, you
but then
know?
he's not because they have this huge fight, the first of several huge fights throughout the movie.
He
Um,
always apologizes.
yeah, they freak out, they're yelling at each other, and then after a little bit, he feels guilty because she's 14 years old and he hasn't been in her life at all, I assume is what the guilt is. But um, so yeah, he apologizes and says she could stay there. He was trying to send her home, and he apologizes and lets her stay there. And she finds out what he does for a living because at this point, or at a certain point, he's been telling her that he's an antique dealer. That's his cover. He tells everybody he's an antique dealer. Um, but like this, his later in the movie, his therapist figures it out because he says that his footstool is like a 1950s something or other, and something that an antique dealer would recognize immediately and would fault him for putting his feet on. But yet Nicolas Cage never says anything about that.
So here's the thing though. We don't know that that's true because
I
he's in
mean,
on the whole thing. Like spoiler
neither
warning,
neither does
but
he. Like neither does he. He
right.
doesn't. He clearly so he can't dispute it,
Right. No, 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 I know. I just
which
meant
is the important thing.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so his daughter figures out that he's not an antique dealer, and she wants to go learn to scam with him. And so at that point, I pretty much put down the befriending a minor uh bingo card spot.
I think you have to take that back though
Why?
by the end of the movie because at the end of the movie we
They're
find
not
out
friends.
no, 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 but she's not a kid. She's been lying about her age. She's an adult.
But at this point in the movie, as far as we know, she's a minor, and he befriended her. So it
Okay.
doesn't matter to me either way. It
Okay.
doesn't
Okay.
affect anything. So we can talk about that later. But
All right.
um, so there's this cashier that it shows multiple times when he
Yeah.
goes and does his groceries, and he always goes to the same cashier, which you don't
Mhm.
really know if it's part of his OCD or if he just really likes this cashier. But yeah, he has a couple moments where it seems like he's kind of hitting on this cashier, and it's not very obvious why this is important. But it does come up later a bit. But yeah, then he brings his daughter. So they do like a minor scam, and then he makes her return the money from the scam. They do like a fake lottery ticket, make somebody think they won, and then the lady is like, "Oh, well, I'll split the money with you," and pulls the money out of her account and gives it to her. And then Nick Roy person tells her to go give the money back because he doesn't want her to actually scam people.
Mhm.
But then he brings her to a scam. Uh, when they went to the strip club earlier, they were setting up this guy to think that Sam Rockwell's character was doing some shady money exchanges,
Yeah, it's
and
kind of a convoluted
it
thing,
is
but basically, I guess at the time, right, the euro was so much higher than the US dollar that if you were to just swap 10,000 for 10,000, whoever had the
euros.
euros would make a profit on that.
Yeah,
Well, I guess it wasn't euros back then. I guess it was British pounds. And you'd get a profit off of it. So the idea is that Roy's character that he's putting on is like skimming this money off from the bank. So
right.
he can't exchange it because he works for the bank. They need somebody disconnected to exchange it with. And they're willing to lose out on some of it, on some of the profit because they need it. They need clean bills.
Right. And so they talk to this guy that Sam Rockwell has befriended at the strip club. That's like a businessman. And they kind of set him up to join them in this. He thinks it is a scam on multiple levels. They think they're scamming. He thinks they're scamming the bank. They are scamming him.
There's so much
But
scamming.
yeah, so they get him on it, and they're like setting him up to because they're like, oh, the most we've ever done is $10,000, and he's like, well, can we do more? And he wants to do like $80,000. So they set up this whole meet at the airport, And at the last minute, they lose one of the guys. They have this homeless guy that they were going to have come into the scam, and but he can't do it, and so they pull the
Well, they move
daughter
it
in.
up. The guy moves the thing up a day.
Yeah, and so they bring the daughter in instead, and so they have this whole setup, and they swap briefcases with the guy, so he doesn't know that they've just swindled or took all the money and the pounds or British dollars or whatever you said they were
Pounds,
pounds.
British
Sterling.
pounds. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so Nick Cage walks away with the briefcase and he tells Frank, Sam Rockwell's character, to go walk the guy to the gate because once you're through the gate, you can't come back through really. And
And
so
they
he
do
went
this whole thing very much to remind people this is a post 9/11 airport,
right, yeah.
right?
So
So,
he's supposed to be walking him in, and making sure that he doesn't open the briefcase until they're safely away.
mhm.
Well, he didn't walk him in, and the guy chases Roy out of the airport, and there's like a big showdown. It's like a whole thing, a whole confrontation.
Yeah, he like
Um,
grabs Angela's hair in the parking garage, and they're like racing out of the parking garage, and of course there's like a slow person, all yada 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 yada.
right. And so the daughter's job during the scam was to go make a big scene at a restaurant that's at the restaurant they're sitting at, and distract the guy while they switch the briefcases.
Right.
And so she does that, and he looks directly at her, the guy they're scamming. And then when they, get down there, like you said, he grabs her hair, and so he's got a good look at her. Well, they get out of there with and meet up with Frank, and Frank says, "Oh, it's gonna be fine, as long as she's clean. He doesn't have any connection to any of us." And so they ask her if she's clean, and she says no, she has a criminal record. And so he's able to find her through the police database, and goes and basically breaks into Frank's house. But before we get to or Roy's house, but before we get to that, there's a couple other scenes that happen. One of which is the pharmacy scene, which I had seen before because it's one of the big ones in the Nick Cage freak out compilations.
Mm.
But definitely for me, one of the best scenes in the movie. In
Yeah.
context, it was much better than it was just like watching it out of context.
Well, so what's happening is his new psychiatrist is only giving him like a week's worth of pills at a time, basically saying if you come to the next appointment, you get another set of pills. Is kind of the idea, right? And now he's out of pills, but the psychiatrist is out of town. So he doesn't have enough pills to make it through the weekend. That's why he's at the pharmacy and he is freaking out.
Right. Um, Yeah, it's a great scene, but he
Yeah.
finds out that the pills that the doctor has been giving him are not like prescribed medication or like samples of a medication. They're like menopause pills or something from like that from off the shelf.
Yep. It is a supplement, an
Yeah.
over-the-counter supplement.
Yeah. So he starts getting suspicious as to what was going on. So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor basically tells him, this I had a suspicion that a lot of this OCD was just made worse by the anxiety and the things happening in your mind, and that when I gave you this placebo, it got better. And with his daughter, all of that combined had like lessened stress in his life, and so he was able to kind of get over some of those symptoms of some of his mental illnesses. Um, while he was on these supplemental pills that he thought were more than that. Um, and so he starts talking about trying to get custody of her. So he's getting pretty serious about it at this point.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get a dancing scene, a scene where he dances. So that's
There's
another,
some cute stuff. They go bowling,
yeah,
they go
they're hanging out. They
dancing.
seem very happy.
It's so adorable.
For you as a father, I'm sure
I
it was
know.
just extra meaningful.
Yeah, Nick's
Um,
good at that, man. He really is. Like his better movies are just really, really good.
family oriented.
Well, not it's
Well, his family moments in movies, I think
yeah,
he's really good at that. Yeah.
yeah.
I think
It
it's
was
because he
nice.
has kind of an everyman vibe to where, you can kind of put yourself in his shoes as opposed to somebody like
Yes.
Brad Pitt, who, I can't really put myself in Brad Pitt's shoes, you
No,
know.
Nick settles into the dad role very easily.
Exactly. Yeah.
they're out there bowling, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, watch me. I learned this trick. I forget where. Yeah, I learned this trick, somewhere." And he's a terrible bowler,
Yeah, he just goes
and
straight into the gutter.
but it feels so natural. Like it
It feels
doesn't.
authentic, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, we get a Nick Cage dancing scene, which is a square on our bingo card. Um, so then they go back one after one of these dates, they go back to his house, and the guy is there, the guy that they tried to scam,
Yeah,
and
Chuck.
Chuck, yeah, and he's got his daughter with him,
Frank's
and
there, all messed
Frank's
up.
there. Yeah, he got fucked up, and so the guy wants his money plus interest, and he's got a gun on Roy. And so Roy tells the daughter to go get the money, and instantly you know what's going to happen at this point, because the gun up until this point, other than being like a conversation piece, hasn't done anything, but it's been an important part of the movie thus
Nick
far.
doesn't keep it on him, right? Like up until
No,
this point, the big key here is Nick is not violent, and he even brings it up because he was. So I believe we're told that he was violent towards his ex when he found out she was cheating on him. He left her with a black eye, I believe is how he phrased it.
yeah,
And then maybe that was like the end of that for him, and he's no longer supposedly this violent person or whatever. So he doesn't keep the gun on him.
right. And she, Angela at some point asks him why he has a gun. And so, there's been some conversation about it, but it really hasn't played the role it needs to play. And so, of course, instead of coming back with the money, she comes back with the gun,
Right.
and she shoots the guy. And you don't really ever see the bullet wound or see like the dead body. You just, Frank says, "Oh man, he's dead. There's no coming back from this.
Well, he says he's not going to make it.
He's not going to make it." Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, because he kind of like
Implies
doubles
that it's
back and like
dead.
falls back over the coffee table or whatever. I do have a question though. So Chuck is being very sexist towards and ageist towards Angela, right? He calls her like little girl and stuff like that a couple of times. Is that casual discrimination?
No,
No? Okay. That's one of
I
our
don't
other
think so. I mean,
bingo squares.
she's a white woman. It's,
Just
ageism is a form of discrimination, but I think,
he was
calling
very
her,
misogynistic towards her, so I wasn't sure
sure.
if
I
that
mean,
qualified.
I didn't put it as that,
Okay.
but so yeah, we see uh we have basically Frank leaves, and I think Angela leaves, and the guy gets up and knocks him out. Is what you think happened. He didn't
Right.
die. He got up and knocked him out. And so when Nicolas Cage comes to, he's in a hospital bed, and he's got like what appear to be some sort of federal agents or police officers there interrogating him about what happened. And we do get Nicolas Cage butt, which I think counts for nudity.
I missed it. I don't remember that.
Yeah, he was in like a hospital gown, and he stands up, and
Yeah.
we get a full butt.
All right. I'll
I
take it.
don't know if we. Oh yeah, we did cross that off.
That counts. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So at this point, they interrogate him, and he falls asleep again. But then he gets back up and starts walking around looking for the agents and can't find them. And he walks outside, and he's like in a small like offshoot of a room on a roof somewhere or something. Like he's not in a
Well,
hospital.
so there's a couple things we've skipped over here that I think are important. So one of the things that he does with his daughter is he takes her to the bank and he has a safety deposit box there. And he does sign the box over to her, but she doesn't get the code, the PIN code until he dies, is what he says.
Right.
Right. Well, while he's in this hospital bed, he gives his psychiatrist the code.
Yeah, as a like pass this on to my daughter, she'll know what it means.
Right. And so that's important. But then, yeah, no one's talking to him. Like it's really hot. He's just asking for AC. He's not handcuffed anymore. I don't know
Right.
when that
That was
happens.
weird. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense with the whole ruse and everything like that. But I just in the moment, I was like, I don't know. But yeah, so there you go. Then he finds out
Yeah,
they're
he
not
walks
doctors.
outside, and yeah, he starts to piece together the fact that he just got scammed. That the whole thing was a play for his safety deposit box money, which it's shown several times that he's used for the scams because he goes and gets money from it. and it is a big box just loaded with money. I mean, it's a lot of money.
It's, upwards, up six figures, maybe even a million. We don't really know, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah. And so he has suspicions, what's going on, but he goes to his ex-wife and asks who if Angela's there. And she doesn't has no idea who Angela is. And we find out at this point that the cashier he was hitting on looks an awful lot like his ex-wife.
Yeah, I noticed
Very
that.
similar. He has the
Yeah.
type.
Yep, yep.
And
That's
I think
funny.
that's by design. That's why he was gravitating towards that cashier. He was, kind of made him probably feel like he was having a friendly interaction with his ex-wife before things went bad.
That's fair.
Um, so yeah, he finds out that he got swindled. He goes to his safe at home and finds a note from Frank in there, basically explaining what's going on. The doctor was in on the scam. Everybody was in on the scam other than him.
And it was
And
Frank. Frank was the mastermind behind it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it skips to like a year later, I think it was.
Yes. Hmm.
He's now a carpet salesman. Um, so he's gone straight.
Because
Uh,
he was promising Angela that's what he was going to do so he could get custody. And so
right.
he decided to follow through with that.
Yeah. And so he's working his normal, 8 to 5, and this really douchey guy comes in looking for carpet, and says that he needs to ask his girlfriend about something. And of course, it's Angela with different hair, and different kind of look. And so that they have kind of a an encounter there where she explains that, she didn't really like at a certain point she didn't really want to do it anymore, and that she didn't even get her cut of the money that she was promised, and that Frank ended up skipping out on her portion of the money too.
Because she wasn't really a con artist. It was the one time she had done it kind of thing. And,
Right.
and so she's actually with this guy. She's not conning him. And
Yeah, and they legitimately want to buy carpet for their apartment. Did you notice the carpet that they
it's
bought?
like leopard print
It's
or
like this
something.
hideous leopard print carpet,
My
which
mom would
fits
have loved
because,
it. My
uh,
mom would have loved it.
yeah, but it fits him because he's kind of a douchey guy, So, um, yeah. And then yeah, he goes home and now he's living with the cashier, and they're seemingly expecting a child. So
Yeah,
happy ending,
he moved
I guess.
fast.
Yeah, that's my
Um,
last note.
there is though he and Angela do get this kind of moment where they get to kind of talk about where they are, and he talks about kind of how everything changed him. And yeah, this is where she mentions that she's not a kid, that she is an adult or whatever. And she says that, don't you want to know my real name? And he, is like, yeah, I already do. And she calls him dad. Like, it's just kind of cute, sentimental way of wrapping up the movie.
Yeah,
The movie very much shows the good and bad people kind of thing.
right.
The good that bad people are capable of, and vice versa, I suppose. Um, but I'll tell you, man, my hang up, like, this is an extremely well acted movie, right? It's well shot. It's a very, very good movie. My one hang up with it is I was distracted as hell because I was convinced that she was conning him the whole time. And I was just waiting for that to happen or be explained in some way. Cause like the real giveaways for me were we never see the mom. He
Yeah,
never talks to the mom, and he never drops her off at the actual house. It's always down the street. And she's always like, go, go, go ahead. Like he never watches her walk up or into the house or anything like that. And she's very good at the con artist stuff, right? She picks it up really fast. She's convinced that he's lying about his job and these other things. She's very kind of emotionally manipulative,
yeah,
right? And she doesn't, so I was just kept waiting for the other foot to drop, kind of shoe to drop, whatever kind of thing. And so I found that very distracting. I did not anticipate Frank and Chuck and Angela working together with Dr. Klein on this really big con. And I think there's some threads there that I think you could pull that maybe don't quite work, but it was a very entertaining movie.
yeah. I agree. Um, and there's a lot of people that agree with you. We go through these reviews sometimes of the movies, and so we got some 1 out of 10 reviews here. We got one that's just a
Jesus.
contrived piece of garbage forced down your throat. He said, "Why doesn't this genius speak to his wife for once? Were these guys psychics too? How could they even predict all this? The need for a new shrink, a daughter, and therefore access to a safety deposit box, and of course the happy ending marriage and new life with a woman he was barely exchanging words with at a grocery store. Give me a break."
I will say
Um,
it is a pet peeve of mine when people complain that a fictional film is contrived.
yeah, I get that.
Like
I get
it's
that.
fiction. All fiction is contrived.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there.
This person said, I wasn't surprised when the con on him was revealed as much as I was depressed by the daughter not being real. You watch a whole movie that implies redemption between a father and his estranged daughter and a recovering con man, but instead you get laughed at for having hope.
No,
Um,
see, no, because he does grow as a person. You see him get better, right? You see his tics lessen. He's not using the medication anymore. He's becoming a more confident, more easygoing person. The experience still changes him for the better. And I think it goes to show that like the money wasn't making him happy and wasn't giving him the life that he needed. What he really needed was a family.
sure.
I think
This
that's
one
the
is
takeaway.
this one's from Tim Tindy. You'll like this one because it's a little more Nick centric. This movie is a failure on 3 levels, each one worse than the previous one. Nicolas Cage gives a mannered performance that a student in acting 101 would give. That's the number one. Number
Hmm.
two, the big twist is predictable and far-fetched. Let's see. In order for all this to happen, Rockwell's character has to assume Cage will lose his medicine down the sink, need a new shrink, never go to his daughter's house, and ask the shrink to call his ex-wife for him. Then three, Cage is supposed to be this brilliant con man, but he falls for something that was obvious to me in the audience. And the worst part, he comes to terms with it all in one ridiculously far-fetched character and or chance encounter a year later. Good to see you, he says to the fake daughter that tore his heart out a year earlier. And then we have the con artist herself looking longingly and saying, Dad. A feeble attempt at a Hollywood happy ending epilogue to help the box office after the dark and fatally predictable twist.
I mean, I think some of that's harsh. I agree with some of it. And I've thought a lot about it. The whole knocking the pills into the sink obviously couldn't be predicted. So here's my take on that. If you guessed that she was conning him, I think that that is a reasonable guess. I had guessed that. If you guessed that Frank and Chuck and Dr. Klein were in on it, I find that extremely hard to believe. I think
Yeah,
that came out of nowhere legitimately. Okay. I think that was very well
I
done. And I
agree.
think maybe the ruse is that we're supposed to be so focused on Angela the whole time that we miss any of the clues about the other three. Okay.
Right,
Now, he may not, maybe knocking the pills down the drain just sped up the timeline. At some point, he was going to need more because he takes it every single day.
right.
And Frank keeps knocking on that, right? Did you take your pills today? Did you forget to take your pills? Like he keeps talking about it. So this is a very focused thing. The next time he needed a refill, that other doctor was going to be gone. For all we know, those original pills weren't legit either.
We know that they're able to play with flexible timelines.
Right.
So, yeah,
So all I think is it's just sped up that timeline. That's all I think happened there. Now, yes, needing Dr. Klein to call the wife for him, I think that's what happened, right? But I think the Dr. Klein scenario was just find something where he's vulnerable.
right,
They might not have known exactly what that was going to be. And maybe Angela wasn't originally part of the plan. And Frank brought her in once they got the daughter hook. We don't really know how much time passes between here's my ex-wife's phone number and he goes and meets Angela.
right.
Right. So I think there is some room to play with there. But I do think that there's a little fuzziness. I think the way Chuck chases them down in the airport is a little unrealistic if he was faking it. Like
Right.
I think that was maybe a little bit over the top because they all could have gotten caught and arrested for like, assault and things like that
Any
in a very,
number of
very
things.
public
Driving
area. Yeah.
recklessly. Yeah.
Right. So like I don't know, there's a few things there that don't necessarily there's some rougher edges there, but overall, I do think that the bigger twist of it being Frank, I think that does work.
We do have a couple of Cage centric just sentences here I want to hit on. This person said Cage's twitches were utterly annoying, and as an occasional does were laughable. And then this other person said, once again, Nicolas Cage and his freewheel and toupee ham it up beyond recognition.
Oh, I didn't notice any problems with his
Yeah,
hair.
me either. But there's very few 1-star ratings. There's many more 10-star ratings. If
I
you
do want to say just real quick, as somebody who has known people that like struggle with OCD and stuff like that very well for like most of my life, like it, these are things that happen that are real. So if you really took it as laughable, I think that just means you don't have anybody in your life who has shown that to you. That would be my take.
certainly possible. Um, let's see. Here's a one from a Nicolas Cage fan. 10 out of 10. Wow, what an experience. As I went in expecting to gain not to gain much, the amount I gained is truly fantastic. I'm a big Nicolas Cage fan, so I really came here to see another one of his generally terrifically flamboyant performance, and I found myself not a bit disappointed. That was, that's a nice little thing about Nick Cage. This guy said the amazing thing about Matchstick Men is that it shouldn't have worked. It tells three stories, primarily the story of a brilliant con artist. It also tells the story of a man driven by germophobia and the story of the relationship between a man and the daughter he never knew he had. The protagonist of all three stories is Roy Waller, played by Nicolas Cage, in an Oscar-worthy performance, he says. I've always admired Nick Cage, but in this film, he outdoes himself. Which, that's a nice bit of positive stuff towards our one true God there. Um, yeah, I mean, there's the 10 out of 10s are a lot of them are praising Nicolas Cage, Sam Rockwell's performance. Um, it's interesting the as it is often when we read these, the difference between a 10 out of 10 and a 1 out of 10, because they will oftentimes say the same thing, but for a 10 out of 10, they use that same thing as a positive, and the 1 out of 10 it's a negative. So it's always funny for me the how that works out. But yeah, we don't have to spend any more time on that. But yeah, it's a interesting gamut of reviews there. But like you said, overall it's rated pretty highly on IMDb in terms of the Nick Cage movies we usually watch. They're usually like between a 4 and a 6, and this one's a 7.3, which is relatively high.
Yeah, and look, this is a very good cast. Like Alison Lohman hasn't done a ton. She more or less retired about 15 years ago, and only really does the cameos and stuff that her husband produces or makes. And but the rest of this cast is also just very solid. You know, she's great in it. She actually is really really good in this. But yeah, Sam Rockwell is a stellar actor. I love
He's
Sam
great in
Rockwell.
everything though, so it's not
Yeah,
super surprising.
no, but like Bruce Altman did a good job. Bruce McGill was like a scary dude in parts of this movie. He did a really good job in this. Just overall, like the cast was really strong. It's a very well produced film. It's not
Absolutely.
perfect, but it's very, very good.
It's entertaining, yeah.
Yeah. So now we gotta rate this thing, man. So we have our Cage O meter where we score our movies 0 low, 20 high on both quality and caginess.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go first on quality for this one. So I really liked it. I do think it's a really good movie. Like I said, not quite perfect or anything, but I think I am going to give this a 16.
Yeah, I was at a 15, so I think we're definitely close on that.
Okay. So 15 for Ryan, 16 for me. So 15 and a half on quality. Caginess, also pretty high.
Yeah, agreed. Well, what did we do for leaving Las Vegas?
So for Leaving Las Vegas, you gave it a 17 and I gave it a 15.
Okay. It's interesting to me because I feel like this is actually a little more cagey than leaving Las Vegas, but 17 is pretty high. For leaving Las Vegas, he was pretty cagey. I don't know. I'd probably put this one at a 17 also.
So I was going to give it a 17.
Okay, so we're on the same page on
So that
that
does
one.
bump up its average a little bit because now it's a 17
Right.
instead of a
So it
15.
sits a little higher than leaving Las Vegas does.
Yeah. So a 15 and a half on quality and a 17 on caginess, which puts it in that top quadrant of really like some really great stuff. I mean, obviously like Pig's not in there because there's no caginess in Pig,
Right,
but
but leaving Las Vegas is in the same kind of vicinity.
exactly. Yeah. There's some really, Moonstruck's up in there.
Yeah,
There's some really good movies up in that quadrant. So
agreed.
all right, so next up, we have to decide what movie joins our Wheel O Cage and replaces Matchstick Men. So this is not what we're reviewing next. This is what joins the wheel, and that is Sympathy for the Devil.
Okay, that's a newer one.
Yeah, relatively new film there with the guy who played Rick Flag in the Suicide Squad. Uh, and so,
Joel Kinnaman or whatever his name is.
yeah, thank you. There you go. So to find out which Nicolas Cage movie we're going to talk about next, you'll have to watch our Wheel O Cage, where we spin that wheel to pick our movie. You can go to comingofcage.com, at Coming of Cage. You can subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice, or you can watch us by subscribing to the Derrico Studios YouTube channel out there as well. Ryan, anything else on Matchstick Men?
Nope. I think it was good. I think everybody, if you're a Cage fan listening to this podcast, you should check it out. Although
Yes.
now the twist has been spoiled for you, so but maybe you'll have fun watching it and kind of trying to pick up clues that you might not have picked up otherwise.
Yeah, it's worth another watch. I actually bought this one, so I'm sure I'll be watching it in the future because I really did enjoy it quite a bit, and I want to see if there are clues to the Sam Rockwell twist there at the end.
For sure. Watch it with the wife.
I think I will. I think I
Yeah.
will. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We are the Coming of Cage podcast. I'm Derek. That's Ryan.
See you next time.